aspects of health. So we share tips to improve your physical, mental, intellectual, social, spiritual, and financial health. Today, with our amazing three guests, we're going to be focusing on the topic of physical health as related to muscles. If you've ever seen Millionaires Are Made, this is the show built on the fundamental belief that every person you meet knows something you don't, and there is absolutely something to be learned from every person on the planet there. In the spirit of authenticity, we don't talk about tips or advice before the show starts. This is just real and raw, no bias, no persuasion, just three awesome people sharing their amazing life's journey. I don't know any of these guests except for one who I happen to be a good personal friend with. Look, all kinds of comments and questions is what we're looking for. We answer them live. If you got a guest who you have a piece of advice or any sort of expertise, come on the show. Like, look, sign up at the link below there. You got a topic you want us to talk about? Got something you're holding back onto, feeling lost, need a little advice on? Let us know. We will create a show behind that. So, to get us all kicked off here, I want to invite my very, very dear friend, Sean, onto the show for his tip today.
What's up, Josh?
Sean, how goes it, man?
It was a good shock. I was like, wait a minute. I thought this was, and I'm like, what is he doing hosting this? Okay, cool. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Austin's having kind of some internet issues, not able to host on the show today. So I'm hosting today from
Awesome.
Black Capital. And I want to, take some time and give you the floor here to tell our audience, who are you, Sean Hubers?
So I'm a high-performance business mindset coach and also a medical hypnotherapist. My interesting background for this topic is I was a massage therapist for over 20 years, then a personal trainer for 25. So I've worked with all kinds of people from 13-year-olds all the way to 86, from college athletes to Olympic athletes to just everyday people. And I think it's kind of interesting how this whole topic of muscle in itself we're going to be talking about, because there's different things that people think are very true, and then there's other things that are just completely wrong, in my mind at least.
Nice. So that being said, what's your tip for our audience?
So the tip that I think that's quite interesting is a lot of people put a lot of effort into pushing themselves, eating really, really healthy to try to put on a lot of muscle. And the reality of it is recovery is much more important. The rest, the deep sleep you need to get, because you push yourself too fast. I know there's a thing called rabidose where muscle breaks down so fast that it actually starts to screw with the kidneys because there's so much protein put into the bloodstream, and that's overworking. It takes time for our bodies to recover, and without recovery, we're not going to get the gains that we're looking for.
Nice. Well, I mean, you told us a little bit about your experience and stuff, but where'd you come across that tip in particular? Like, what's the story behind it?
So I was myself very much into working out constantly and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then you start to realize, like, okay, I'm so sore, I'm aching constantly, and you take time off and you come back and you're like, wait, why am I stronger? Now, taking time off is like a day or two, but people get into the groove of, I got to exercise every day. And I'm like, hey, you can move every day, but there's no reason to constantly work on a muscle without it recovering. And again, there's going to be all different types of philosophy on this. It's more of what you're looking to accomplish. Like sprinters, they don't sprint all out every day. Bodybuilders don't work the same muscle group every day. So movement is one of those things where you really need to be on top of what you're doing to be healthier and happier, and realize, like, if you're creating more damage than good, you got to reevaluate where you're at. So that's what I found myself, like, beat myself up way too much, getting injuries constantly, and then still having to go back to work with an injury. It was not fun. So I learned how to slow it down a little bit, enjoy it a little bit more.
I think that's great advice. Slow it down and take a little bit more enjoyment out of life. So thanks. We'll bring you back on here with all the rest of our guests. I want to introduce our next guest, Kristen.
Hi,
Hey,
Josh.
hey, Kristen. Tell our
Nice to
audience,
meet you.
who are you, Kristen?
I'm Kristen Yupenlotzgrek. My company is called Pilates Home Practice. I'm a master Pilates instructor with 25 years experience. I'm also a posture and gait or walking specialist and also a neurosomatic intelligence coach. So we pull in whole body, whole system, nervous system to change patterns that might be causing pain.
Nice.
My
Nice.
tagline is feel so good you'll dance in your kitchen.
I love that. That's awesome. So, tell our audience here then, what's the tip you have for them as far as muscles go and physical health?
My tip is think about what you want to do with your muscles rather than just looking pretty. What do you want to do with your muscles, especially not just now, but when you're 70, 80, 90?
Mm,
Myself, I want to be skiing. I still want to be skiing. I want to be hiking. I want to be traveling the world and, lugging my luggage quick through the airport. I want to be on the floor playing with my grandchildren. So I want to have functional muscles that help me do the things that I want to do all the way through my life.
I just want to dance in the kitchen.
Dance in your kitchen is and also let it be fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Like build fun movement into your mundane tasks. So I'm not a great cook. I don't really like to be in the kitchen. And I know your next question is how did I come up with this tip? Can I move into that?
Yeah.
So I was a Pilates teacher. I could do the advanced work on all the apparatus. I was very strong, but I was in pain because I'd had a couple car accidents and I had constant like stabbing pain under my shoulder blade and neck limitation. And I thought that if I just worked harder and got stronger and built more muscle, I would feel better. But what I wasn't taking into consideration is releasing the tension first and letting those deep foundational muscles participate too. And the kitchen kind of stuff happened when one day I was standing at the kitchen sink. I was chopping vegetables and I was in terrible pain. Usually in the kitchen, I was in a lot of pain. And I just had a moment of clarity of noticing where my body was. And my feet were externally rotated, my knees were locked, my hips were against the counter, my shoulders were up by my ears, and my head was hanging forward. So I was kind of in a braced position because of the pain. And so I knew in the Pilates studio how to organize my body, but I just had a moment where I just brought my hips back, organized my feet, let my shoulders slide down my back, and felt my head bobble up on top, and my pain went away.
Mm,
So that was the moment when I went, oh my God, I'm doing great work in the studio. I've got great muscles. I look good, but I'm in pain. So what good is it? So that's how I kind of started feeling that you have to let go of the tension first. And if
yeah.
you're going to the gym for 2 hours a day and building beautiful muscles and then sitting at your desk for 8 hours in 90-degree positions and your ankles hurt and your low back hurts and you just think, oh, I got to get to the gym and work out harder. I don't know. There's just an equity about how you're using your body. So like for me, I'm on the ground now. I do most of my work sitting on the ground because for me, I have this, for me, it's my left ankle. If my left ankle's not in good condition, the rest of my body doesn't feel good. So I pay a lot of attention to my left ankle, my left big toe. I had a bike accident when I was 10. It set off a whole pattern that now I understand. The tension pattern in my shoulder was partly because I wasn't anchored into my left foot. So when I anchor into my left foot, my shoulder can drop down. So for me, Pilates is every movement is whole body movement. And in our
Yeah.
lives, everybody is whole body, everything is whole body movement. So if you're reaching up into a cabinet, you're reaching down with your opposite foot. And if you're not getting that whole body connection, the fascia, the nervous system, all that kind of thing.
I love a good aha moment. It sounds like you had like
Right.
the aha moment
Yeah.
there with it.
And what I do with my students is I help people find the quickest way to that missing link. And I actually call it DARE: desire, appropriate action, remember, and explore. So figure out what, for me, it's that getting my left heel anchored into the earth. And then I I think about I want to be able to ski, I want to be able to hike. That's my driving force, that's my desire, and why I think about this throughout the day. And then remember, you have to have a moment that hooks into the things you're already doing every day. So every time I get in the shower, say, I notice I'm not anchored into my left foot. And that makes a big difference. And now it's natural and I can move on to the next thing, but that's always my first anchor. And then explore. Once you've got that kind of into your life, then I can kind of make the movements bigger and notice how that affects my knees, my hips, my shoulders. So that's what I call DARE.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you so much for the tip. And we'll bring you back on to discuss with all the rest of our guests here in just a second. I want to
Thanks,
introduce our
Josh.
next guest, Nathan.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Nathan, tell us in our audience here, who are you, Nathan?
Well, I am the founder of Mind Body Literacy, and I'm also the host of the Excellence in Exercise and Movement Summit, which is a free online summit that has over 20 upcoming industry leaders talking about new frontiers in exercise science, and then practical ways that folks can apply, exercise and movement in their lives, whether they're doing yoga or weightlifting or cool acrobatics like hand balancing or nutrition. And that really gives you a hint about what I do, which is that I help and I mentor folks with skills that are related to exercise and movement and using them effectively. And whether those are people who already work in mind-body professions, but really want to zero in on exercise, or people who are just very enthusiastic or trying to solve a complex problem, I help people with that. And then also within that, in the longer programs that I run with folks, I use and teach some techniques which help people build quality relationships, both to themselves and to other folks. Because those are really the two most valuable tools I found in my own life, using exercise and movement as a training modality, and then having quality relationships. And my background is, I was thinking when Sean was talking, these worlds, they're really like worlds that you enter into, and they're kind of, it's like going to another country. They're like vast and exciting and tiring. And, there's a lot that people encounter when they step into these worlds. There's a journey that if you go into it professionally, you take. For me, yoga was my gateway drug, and I became super passionate and I got certified as a teacher. And then, you start to learn though that, things are connected both in the body and in these worlds. And so that led to, getting certified by the American College of Sports Medicine and personal training, because strength became super important. And that led to nutrition, because you can't have strength if you don't have an understanding of nutrition. So I became a certified nutrition coach. And so just this vast sort of exploration of the healing arts and movement arts. And when people really get into it, like I did, they get very passionate, even though I had come from the corporate world and traditional healthcare and, multinationals and law firms and all that. There's sort of a moment where you say, this is for me, and you kind of dive in head first. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Sounds like yoga was your gateway drug.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So as far as our topic today, muscles and physical health, what's your tip for our audience?
Yeah, well, I guess my tip would come from this idea that, just like these worlds are sort of vast, muscle itself is a complex tissue. And it's really organizing a lot of inputs into it. I often say to people, like when you play a piano or a chord, you're not just hitting one key. And I think, to the point that Sean was making, it's very easy in these stages when you go into a place, you go into something new and you don't know, and you start hearing things, well, you should do compound lifts. You should always practice Ashtanga yoga this way. You get kind of swept up in it. And often there's some good with that. And maybe you're getting carried away. But the thing that would keep people's eye on the ball is to remember the Goldilocks principles. Because Goldilocks' superpower was, she always did trial and error, but she was always looking for the right amount. And so the key really is can you find the right amount of stress or stimulus or whatever you call it, balanced by recovery, as Sean was talking about, so that it makes you stronger or moves you forward or builds the skill or enhances your life? Because too much stress or too little is really what's going to send you backwards. So my advice would be find the right amount of stress through trial and error, like Goldilocks. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, how did you come about that tip? Like, what's the story behind it?
Well, through that journey that I explained, really, going through those, it takes a long time, because when you're starting, you're just trying to learn and you're absorbing what people are telling you. And it takes a long time to digest things, to try different things, to do the heavy, lifting and the compound lifts, and to do the 6-day-a-week yoga practices and get deeply into nutrition and biomechanics and all this, and let all of this, permeate. And then I think, as you're seeing with some of your guests, when you get a little more distance and you've come to the forest from the trees part of the experience, you think about, okay, well, how does this really fit into life with people who are busy? And that's the other thing. The right amount of stress for a busy mom who has 3 kids and aging parents is going to be very different from a student in school, which is going to be very different for you when you're sick and you're totally not feeling well and you have 100 other stresses on you from a time when you're feeling your best. So when you start to look at this question of forest for the trees, and you're working it out in your own life, you do start to see that really, what we're doing is we're playing with these forces that are coming through us, whether that's through yoga, through dance, through weightlifting. And you begin to say, well, how can I play with this in a way that enriches my life, makes me stronger, does maybe build some muscle, because that is important metabolically and for a lot of other reasons. But the game is really one of sustainability. And I think people eventually come to that place after they've gone through some of these stages and phases. And that's what happened for me.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, right there, I want to bring everybody back on to kind of talk about that, because I definitely think you touched on something really important, that sustainability and where it fits in your lifestyle is a huge thing as far as building muscle and keeping that balance and level, right? Because moderation in all things, they say, right? And so too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, just as much as too much of a bad thing is, right? So
Absolutely.
Definitely want to bring back on Sean and our other guest here to discuss that. We've got a question from the audience too. In the meantime, said, how can you maintain muscle mass at your age, I think is what he said, and what types of exercises are most effective for older adults?
Okay, so I'm not understanding the part about age. What age we're talking? I guess that's older age is what we're asking.
I think so. Yeah, that's that. Speaking to older adults, how do you maintain your muscle mass, and what exercises are most effective?
So as I was sort of talking about before, muscle is a complex tissue, and it really is listening to different signals that are coming in. Some of those signals are your nutrition. There's a lot of press right now about protein, because your body is measuring that and listening to that. It's not the only thing, it's not the whole story, but that's like one key on the piano is your nutrition. What you feel as stretch, or what you feel as tension in the muscle, what we sometimes call time under tension, that's another key on the piano. It's measuring that. There are other factors as well. But what we can do, and that's why the art of training is really trial and error, because we have the science, but it's figuring out what works for you and seeing, and that's usually done, with somebody who knows what they're doing over a period of time, probably weeks and months. But in general, because this is a skill you have to learn, in the same way I sometimes say to people that you learn to brush your teeth and comb your hair and take a shower. Well, you do that in a unique way, and people taught you how to do that. You just don't remember that. But now it's a routine that you can do and you don't need help with. This is sort of like that. It's a routine that has different parts of the recipe that have to be done in certain ways. But on your own, making sure you get enough protein in a meal, doing some resistance exercise. Generally, when you're doing that resistance exercise, you're wanting to, for the most part, and again, it depends on your health history, your activity level. You don't want to jump into things. You want to start slowly in the beginning, learn movement patterns. But if you're somebody who's been doing it and has been well coached, then you can start to get into things like going to 2 to 3 reps before failure, You can use light weights or heavy weights as long as you're tiring and fatiguing the muscle, because that's what it's sensing. And there are many ways to go about that. But I would say you want some resistance exercise. You want to make sure that your nutrition is on point. The rest and recovery is important. And again, this is a very quick sketch because, again, it is a bit of an art form and there are pieces to the recipe. But that would be where I would point your attention to start looking. Yeah.
Sure. And I wanted to bring Sean and Kristen back on. Do you guys have anything to add as far as what types of exercises are most effective for older adults or maintaining muscle mass as you age?
I do, because I'm older, so I'm at that point where I'm I'm in my 60s now, so it becomes more and more important. For me, finding something that you love doing that uses your body. So if you're gardening or building, or one of the strongest people I know is a woman in her mid 80s. She's a rancher and she does it all herself. She takes care of her sheep, she shears them, she builds posts. She comes to Pilates and works on flexibility and alignment, but she uses her body. She's incredibly strong. So also walking is great because you want to keep building strong bones, and hitting your heels against the earth is great for keeping your bones strong. And then taking walking into dancing, if that's something that you love, because there are lots of fun places for older adults to go and dance. Hitting your heels against the floor builds bones, using your breath and your whole body. And also, research shows that dancing, especially with other people, is one of the best ways to keep your brain working well as you age, because you're interacting with other people, you're learning maybe complex movements, and you're using your full body. So if you like dancing full out, like when you were a kid, making sure you're using whole body movement, I think is one of the greatest ways to keep your body and your brain working well. And if you want to, put some wrist weights on so that you're actually building muscle tone at the same time. Make it fun.
Sean?
I'd like to add something. I mean, the big thing I think a lot of people have to take into consideration is getting their blood work done to see where their hormone levels are. Because if your hormone levels are off, it's very difficult sometimes to build muscle. You're feeling very fatigued and run down. That happened to me when I had testicular cancer 20 something years ago. My testosterone was super, super low, and to build muscle was extremely difficult because that hormone was down. The other thing is flexibility and balance is huge when it comes to, you have all this muscle, but can you use it correctly? And being outside and working, I mean, you're moving your body in all different directions. But when you get into the gym, sometimes when you're in a machine, you're only working in one or two different planes, which isn't really incorporating exactly what you need to. So I really enjoy full body exercises where you're doing the range of motion in which you're comfortable with. I always recommend when someone's starting out that they get in with some expert as a trainer to realize, like, hey, yes, our body is supposed to move up and down in this direction, but you have a whole history of injuries, of lack of movement, of just your entire body structure in itself could be different. So let an expert evaluate you and say, okay, if you want to make improvements, here's where I think you should begin before we start wanting to add a bunch of muscle on. Because the muscle, if it's added incorrectly or unbalanced, is going to cause even more issues.
Yeah, in fact, I want to shoot at you another question here from our audience, then, and we'll chop it around here for everybody else. What exercises target the core muscles effectively is what we had from Lily.
So a lot of people think core muscles are the abdomen area. It's actually, from what I've learned, your shoulders to your knees. So my whole thing is learning how to first activate your core. I always tell people, hey, suck your belly button in towards your spine to get your abs to work correctly. And then use as less support as you possibly can, because a lot of times when we have something supporting our back, our core is not going to activate. If we're leaning on something and it's supporting our chest when we're doing a rowing exercise, we're not working our core correctly. So my big thing is, if you can do a TRX machine, or it's a strap machine that you can work out with, it's an amazing apparatus where you're engaging your core the entire time you're going through movement. Pilates trainers are amazing things to use. It's realizing, like, If your core starts to give out, great, you're done. Then you may need some support from another type of apparatus like a bench or something like that.
Kristen, being the Pilates expert, what do you have to say about what
Well,
exercise?
one of the things that I notice, people who don't have their bones in ideal alignment, if you're not aware of where you are in space and you're pulling your belly button in, you're creating tension. And what I have people do is just think about the distance between your rib cage and your pelvis. So sometimes I have people put their thumbs on their rib cage and their fingers on their hip points and notice where you are in space. Think about this as a rectangle or an X of your obliques. And all you have to do sometimes is bring your pelvis back in space, and this rectangle gets bigger and this rectangle gets smaller. So if you're out here and you're doing your core exercises, you're not really finding the most easeful way to activate your core. Sometimes just moving your pelvis back over your heels, boom, you feel your abdominals working, not in a like tense, pull the belly button in kind of way, but just let it participate in natural movement. Back body, front body, side body, up into your shoulder girdle and into your pelvis. It is very complex. And for me, noticing the way that you move through your day, is your pelvis rotated? Then it's going to change the way that core is connected to the front and back. So little moments of, like I said, putting my left heel down organizes my pelvis, which organizes my rib cage, which makes me feel more ease and which gives me more strength. So it's kind of like it doesn't seem like more ease would give you more strength, but that has been my experience. When you have everything in the right place, everything works really well. And then your arm can float up from that deep strength of your core. And you can do a lot more lifting if you have whole body support. So it's not all from your big biceps and shoulders. It's from that support all the way down to your feet.
Yeah, Nathan, what's your input on that as far as targeting
I guess
core
I
muscle?
wonder for who and for what purpose. If it's for a physique competitor or somebody who's interested in aesthetics and they want to get low body fat and they want the muscles to grow to show them, that might be one thing. If it is more on, the somatic side, or a dancer, a movement artist, then, as Kristen was saying, that's a very different kind of work and has a very different feel and a different focus. And the abs may not be visible at all. A yogi might do a practice called Nali, where they have tremendous, unbelievable control of those, of certain muscles, but maybe not really practical for somebody else. So when you say target, are you trying to get out of pain? That would be another situation. So first I'd want to ask, a little bit more about, who it's for and what the goal of it is before I started heading down a role. I think in the general fitness world, we often talk about if it's the same thing, but really, again, as Kristen was talking about, you're feeling into a whole system, a system run on a nervous system, a system made of tissue, and there's a whole somatic experience to that, which is very different than just being in the gym, right? So when we work as a dancer, we work as a movement artist, we work as a somatic artist, working in a very different way than when I go into the gym and just try to build muscle for aesthetics or for power or for strength. And so and they're great tools and they can be combined, but first I'd want to know a little bit about who it is and which way they want to go.
Very insightful. Yeah, I could definitely appreciate that answer. So this is kind of the part of our show where we try to come up with a daily challenge for ourselves and our audience to do that can help grow us in this way. So what would you guys suggest is something that is easy, you can do very quickly, one time a day, that can help with muscle health?
I'll start.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, so because I work with people who are generally dealing with chronic pain, my tip is, like I said, dare. Figure out what you want to do with your body and find the appropriate small action. What's the smallest thing you can do that will make the biggest impact? And then remember, so you figure out when your coffee's dripping, you do it every day. And that could be something as small as anchoring into your heel. And then once that starts to become a part of your everyday life, you can explore moving into squats or letting that be a part of bigger range of motion. And I call it a shift, which is a strategic habit for transformation. So that one little piece is going to build into everything that you're doing. Even if you're going into the gym building muscle, let the whole body participate.
Yeah. So what's the short version of that acronym again, Dare?
Dare, desire. What do you want to do
Desire.
with your body? What's the appropriate action? That's A. Reminder, when are you going to do it? Something integrated into your daily life. And then explore. Once it's a part of your life, let it feel it through your whole body. Let it become a bigger movement.
Okay. What do you guys think? Is that a good daily challenge we can put out for ourselves and our audience to build on their muscle health?
I definitely think, and what I would add to that is put your electronics down 45 minutes before you go to bed to allow your mind to relax so your body can recover more. I think, and it's funny because you'll go see to people and everyone's, why is your neck so tight? Why are your shoulders so tight? They're on a computer or they're on a phone. You got to put that stuff down and relax to get that tension out of your body.
Yeah, I think that's a great little simple thing that we can do. And something I would challenge all of our audience members to do is just put your phone down for 30 minutes a day. Be conscious of not having a phone or a screen or anything in your face, and look at that first D there that Kristen pointed out of desire. What do you want to do with your body, right? Like where do you want to go with your muscle health or your physical health there? So I think that's great. Very much appreciate all you guys on today. And all the wonderful advice that you've given. I also want to, and we've got a long list of sponsors I'm going to go through here. Want to thank Jen Gray, host of the Be Genuine with Jen podcast. Want to thank Eli Grinnell, neuroscience expert, NLP and communication pro with www.truthspeak.us. Danielle Margroff with the Feminine Wealth Movement. Nikki Nicole, Breaking the Silence podcast. And InstaFarm, where you can grow fresh, nutritious produce at home. So again, thank you guys all for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And let's stick with that tip of put your phone down. Gosh, guys, except to watch this show and the 30 minutes you're taking to watch this show. So thank you guys again for being on and have a great rest of your day.